let's get in with one of the creepiest, most inappropriate things. And I think that there's so much to unpack in this is Biden. That's it. President Joe Biden, as the Daily Wire shares creepy Joe Biden interaction with small child ignites firestorm. Now, I don't know if you have seen this video that was played, but actually, let me just play it for you here. Let's just make sure that doesn't have any sound, and let's see if it's going to play. That's not going to play for some reason. I don't know why that's not playing. Okay, so it's not going to play them, or maybe it's playing somewhere else on my screen. Then it's not playing. So you have this interaction where President Joe Biden goes and is, as they say, what presidents, there we go. No, we are going to an ad somewhere, and no, that's it. All right, so let's forget about that page then, Yash. Oh, Yash is going to play that somewhere. Okay, well, Yash, you try to play that somewhere for us and get rid of my my screen. Oh, Yash is going to be playing my screen. No, Yash is doing something. Okay, so Yash is going to try to play it, try to find that video. But you've got President Joe Biden doing what most. Here we go. So he's found the image. You see, President Joe Biden is doing. He goes in, shaking hands and kissing babies, as they say, and then he goes in and starts nibbling on this baby, and then goes to sniff its hair, as we know that this is a comical issue that has plagued Biden for years. But I don't know, just first of all, there's so much inappropriateness, but then you look at the mother who's holding the baby. She doesn't care that this creepy old guy is doing this random stuff. She wants to take a selfie in that moment rather than identifying that her child is freaking out. Look, her child's freaking out and going, get this guy away from me. And then she's just like, let me get a selfie. I want to get a selfie. And then everyone else is like, this is all funny. This is all funny. Dr. Rod, inappropriateness. Is this inappropriate, or is this just fun behavior?
Look, this is a difficult one. I know most of the people who were quoted in that Daily Wire article have no time at all for Joe Biden. My concern is that they do tend to overemphasise his age and all of the complications that come with age, and I'm getting older, so I might become like him. And it does worry me, because the problem isn't that he's old. The problem is that he's not a very good president. And yes. I really think that's what they should focus on. But look, if we're talking to leaders, I would suggest that you don't engage in this kind of behaviour publicly, because not everybody is going to receive it in the same way. And a small child who that little child was probably under maybe 18 months old, was clearly distressed, or at least, if not distressed, nonplussed. And
what was that? Nonplussed.
Nonplussed.
What is that?
Well,
I've never heard that before.
Surprised, off balance, off beam.
Yes.
Certainly not expecting, and not being able to rationalise why this was happening. And look, if you have a bit of a look at that, he wasn't just sort of nudging her with his lips. He had his mouth open, and I don't like that at all. But I just think as leaders, we just need to have a bit of decorum in public all the time. We just have to remind ourselves that when we're in public, we are actually in public. And no matter who we are, we should behave in a way which is becoming of our position and which is really becoming of our humanity. So no, I don't really think that what he did was appropriate. Is it the big sin that many of the commentators, at least on the right, say? I doubt it. He's done it before. People are not surprised by this behaviour anymore. But as leaders, we definitely should avoid it.
So, I mean, there's actually a couple of leadership lessons I kind of see in this. Is the first one, as I mentioned, is the parents, right? The parents, all what they're trying to do is get this selfie with the president, and not aware of their child, who they are meant to be leading. They're not aware of the feelings of their child, and they're just running off. And I suppose that's something that a lot of us leaders can find ourselves in, that trap of chasing our outcome and forgetting the people around us. Like forgetting that the people around us that we're leading are meant to be under our care. We're meant to be providing them some form of security and some form of safety. That's our job as leaders. How do we make sure that while we, yes, as leaders need to pursue our outcomes, how do we make sure we still keep in mind I don't necessarily want to say feelings, because I think feelings are spoken a little bit too much about, at the moment. But the emotional state, let's just say, of the people who we are leading. What's the take there?
Look, I think the big issue here is the parents were doing something for themselves, and the little child was only incidental. And as leaders, it's not about us, folks. It's not about us. It's about the vision that God has given us, and it's about the people who are around us. And
that's really
I felt that one of the things that did come out of that clip was that the parents wanted a selfie. Certainly the person who appears to be the mother was focused on the selfie, not on the child, who was maybe not distressed, but clearly made uncomfortable by that incident. And of course, the thing that goes through my mind is, so what about this stranger danger business too?
Yes.
I think being consistent matters as well. Mm-hmm. And as parents, we certainly do lead our children. There's no doubt about that. And, we didn't have a wide-angled view there. Obviously, there were some security people with Joe Biden, and it was a crowd situation as he was leaving Finland. I mean, and good on him for actually receiving people in the crowd. I think that was a good thing. It's good for leaders to allow people to get close to them, and there are lots of leaders who wouldn't do that. So, full marks to him for that. But I just don't think he conducted himself all that well, and I think the parents should have been a little bit less concerned about their moment, and had a little bit more consideration for the child.
Yeah. So speaking about, Joe Biden, let's transfer now across to him. He obviously has this bad habit. And look, let's be honest, there's a lot of us leaders that we have, I must admit, I have this tendency to be over-friendly. And so I know I need to be aware of that. And we've all got our faults. How do we make sure, because I think that part of it is that's just who he is. Now, that's no excuse, right? He's still inappropriate behavior. But there's kind of this, there's a little bit of beauty in a leader actually being able to be themselves, right? Just being authentically themselves, not being inappropriate. I'm not saying that be authentically yourself and be inappropriate. What I'm saying is how can we still be ourselves without putting up a facade of this pretend person, while still making sure that we are minimizing the appearance or the potential for inappropriate behavior?
Well, I think we have to come to terms with the fact that some behaviours are best not exhibited in public, and best not exhibited with strangers or with people we don't know. Look, anybody's going to cuddle, nibble their own tiny children and grandchildren in my case. But it's a little bit different within the context of family, where obviously you're well known and loved by the children and the parents, and it's a safe environment. It's quite different when we're in a public place where we don't have any idea who the people are, nor do they of us. A small child, of course, doesn't. So I think we've got to set sensible boundaries. That's all. And it's going to be different with different people. Some, as leaders, we know some people a lot better than others. So in my case, as a pastor, there are people I relate to who've lived with us for lengthy periods of time, as you indeed have. So our relationship is a little bit different to someone I may have known for the same period of time, but has never actually lived under my roof. But I wouldn't treat you quite the same way that I would treat my two daughters.
Yes.
Because they're my daughters, they're my flesh and blood. Even though obviously, we say, well, you are part of the family. Qualitatively, my relationship with my two daughters is very different. Yeah. And, I would hug and kiss them in a way that I wouldn't hug and kiss other people, even people in the church.
You never hugged and kissed me goodnight when I was living there. So
never kissed
I didn't
you
get that.
goodnight. No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. And look, also, in the Pentecostal world, we tend to do a lot of hugging. I'm not all that much of a hugger, and I wouldn't say it's a rule of thumb, but most of the time I will ask first.
Yeah.
So I don't just I can't say I do this 100% of the time, but I rarely greet somebody, as it were, with a hug and a holy kiss.
Yes.
And there are those I know very well, particularly those who have lived with us at some stage. Yeah, there will almost always be a hug when we meet, but I definitely don't do that with strangers. And we just need to be reserved because we don't know a stranger's history. We don't know whether we're making them uncomfortable or not, and we don't know what first impression we're going to give to them based on their own experience, their own history, their own worldview, where they're coming from. So, you use the term or the expression that we need to hold ourselves a little aloof, and I think that's probably very good advice. Just be a tiny bit reserved, and you can let the guard down, as it were, a little bit later on when you're in a situation where it's safe and where for sure and certain that you have permission.
But even on that, I think that that's actually an area of concern that leaders do get themselves caught up in, is they have relationship with someone for having led them and mentored them through challenges and over years and known them intimately, or not that way, but know them well, right? That we can, as leaders, find ourselves falling into that trap of becoming too familiar over a long period of time, and then we do something that kind of just changes the dynamic of the relationship. It's either we did something a little bit too familiar where they're like, oh, maybe, and they pull back a little bit, or maybe they change their view of it, or maybe because of that, they become too familiar now, so they not lose respect for you in a bad way, but just more look at you as an equal than rather a leader, and we can lose that influence over them, I suppose.
Look, there is some possibility of that, but look, when that happens and you realise it, you need to talk it through. I think that's the best way. These things are always best in the open. So have a discussion about it and say, look, I really did overstep the mark there. And it's interesting because I know I was in a situation once where I overheard one of my own staff say something to another member of staff. So my staff member was male, the other person was female. And I sort of thought, oh my goodness, that's totally inappropriate. So a little later that day, I just sought out this female and I said, look, would you like me to say something to him about this? And she said, oh, no. I've known him for years and years and years. We've sort of been knocking around for 30 years. It's not a problem. It's all okay. So I didn't do anything about it. But if her response had been different, then obviously I would have had to do something about it. At the very least, have a chat and say, look, actually, no matter how familiar you are with a person, no matter how long you've known them, that really wasn't appropriate. Now, as it turned out, she was quite happy with it, not an issue, so I didn't take it any further.
That's good. That actually kind of leads me to my third point that I wanted to talk about with this story with Creepy Joe, as they say. I forget who it was. There was a report. I think it was Tim Poole and his team at Timcast IRL. I'm pretty sure they were talking about it, and they were hypothesizing. I think that's the right word. But they were playing out what's, after Joe Biden gets back into the car and all the team are there and everything like that, and they run off the next thing. What's the conversation of the team? What are they going on about, right? Because it's interesting that they started playing out that they're like, oh, there's Joe again. They're like, Joe, we keep telling you, don't do that, and everything. So how do we as leaders manage an inappropriate leader? And because we may be leaders, but still in a subordinate position to a senior leader, or we may be, like you just shared, a leader of someone who they themselves are being inappropriate. So how do we manage those dynamics?
That's hard because intellectually I know what the response is. You have to confront it. You have to say to them, look, you know what? That behaviour really wasn't appropriate for the following reasons. But if you're like me and you don't like conflict, the truth is most of the time we let it go.
Or you say something about it off the cuff, kind of, and just let it just
that,
linger,
or you
and
talk
just
about it
disappear.
with others, and that's probably not. That really isn't going to resolve the issue. You really should address the issue directly with the leader, but most of us don't, and I'm just as guilty of that as anybody, because most of us, we don't like conflict. We don't want to get into conflict with our leader. And honestly, the few times when I have, stood up for someone who was treated inappropriately, it hasn't gone all that well for me either. So, it's a really difficult area. I think just as we need to resolve that as leaders, we're not going to repeat the mistakes that we observe in other leaders.
That's good. Yeah. And I think going back to your story of what you just shared is you don't automatically go and reprimand the person or whatever. You go and speak to the victim, let's say, the recipient of the inappropriate behavior, and to confirm with them first, like you shared, like they were like, that's not inappropriate, we're friends. However, I still believe it's important for us as leaders to address that behavior with that person anyway. Pull them in and just go, hey, look, I'm aware that you guys have a relationship, and I know that may not seem inappropriate to them. However, there's other people in the office that observe that, and their opinion of you now is they think that you're going to say and do that about other people. They may not be aware of your relationship. And so, or you need to bring them aware to, hey, that I get that you've got that relationship there, but you don't want to fall into the habit of saying things like that and then accidentally say it to someone else in the office or someone else in the team that you don't have that relationship with. So I think even though you addressed it with the person first to find out if they felt it was inappropriate, I still feel like it's worthwhile speaking to the accused. No, the
other person. Yeah, we
the
know
other
what you're
party.
talking about. Yep. Look, I think that's valid. That in terms of, say, your interest in their personal development, that you'd hope that they'd be tactful enough not to use the same language in front of someone they didn't know so well. I think you've got a point there, because you want to establish a culture, and something like that most likely is not something that you really want to be central in the culture that you're trying to develop in your organisation.
And what about? Let's go back specifically to the President Joe Biden situation. We, as his team, do you try to now limit his interactions with people like that? Do you try to protect him, build a wall around? Like, what do you do when a leader who you're serving is being inappropriate? And no matter how many times you've said something, no matter how many times the media has had a go about it, what do we do as leaders of, within organizations or whatever, subordinates to a leader that's being inappropriate? Can we kind of try to build a wall around them, or so? Like what should we do?
Look, I don't know that using the President of the United States is a really good example here, but just because of the way the whole system works anyway, that there wouldn't be too many people who would. I don't think there'd be too many people, perhaps other than his own family, his wife, for example, who would be in a position where they felt empowered to make a comment anyway.
Yeah.
Now, you've suggested that they might organise things so that he's not, say, in close physical proximity to a young child and a family like that. They might, but of course the President could overrule them. Mm-hmm. So, and the other thing to note here is that this by no means featured on the front page of a lot of the legacy media anyway. So there's a lot of people who really couldn't care less about this. We don't actually know the attitude of his staff. They might be quite okay with it. I think, though, what I would be doing if I was looking after his public image, just say, look, you know what? One of the areas that we need to focus on is something other than that, right? There may be other ways in which you can express the relational side that you want to express, rather than something like this. But the way the media is today, the mainstream media really give Joe Biden a free ride. They actually give a lot of other leaders a free ride as well. And they're really they don't criticise them very much at all. Most of the criticism of this incident has actually come from, if you like, one side of the media, not the legacy media, not the mainstream media. It's come from podcasts, it's come from the Daily Wire. I think, there are a few others. I don't like to call them right-wing. I'd probably call them conservative.
Conservative, yes.
More conservative. Mm-hmm. They don't see, but you see, they don't like Joe Biden, period. Mm-hmm. So that they're always looking for things to criticise. Honestly, I think it's his policies that we really need to focus on, because his policies are wrecking the United States. I don't think there's any doubt about that. His policies are absolutely dreadful for the development of a cohesive, economically strong nation, and that really should be the focus. I mean, when you think about it, he was in meetings most of the time on that trip to discuss the war in the Ukraine, something that could potentially drag the whole world into another war.
Yeah.
So snuggling up to a baby is pretty small change in that context.
Yeah.
He's made the decision to send 3,000 reservists into Europe. Well, that has to be seen by many people as an escalation of the US contribution to the war in the Ukraine. And, those are the things we should be focusing on. The loss of...
But do you think that, like, I agree, but do you feel like that then as a leader, especially when you're in this situation where you're dealing with something quite heavy, that you need to be extra careful of your behaviour and not do anything inappropriate that is going to distract from the core message?
I don't think he should have done what he did. I really don't. But I also think the media that are making a big thing of this should be trying to fry some bigger fish. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I agree with you 100%. What he did, I wouldn't recommend leaders should do. Those are the sorts of things they should avoid in general. So that's the kind of thing you do at home with your own family.
If they're okay with it.
Yeah. Sure.
Because reports are that his own family don't like him doing that. But anyway,
Yeah.
so the moral of the story is for leaders, don't nibble babies.
You could say that'd be a good title of a book.
That'll be his biography, right? Don't nibble babies. Okay.
To be honest, if someone did that to my granddaughter, even if they were the United States, I wouldn't be very happy at all.
Yeah.
Definitely wouldn't
Agreed.
be happy.
Agreed. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.